Greetings, dear teachers. In this video, we will try and understand how to make our classrooms more engaging and collaborative. For this, we will use our documents called project-based learning documents. This is PBL number 1 for grade 7. Please note that the document will begin with a few title details. It will tell you which grade the particular PBL belongs to and which chapter it has been mapped. Along with chapter mapping, a few goal mapping has also been done, meaning that the concept covered in this particular PBL will be mentioned first. For example, this PBL contains components and details of a story and theme of a story. The same has been mapped to certain learning outcomes in our DSCRT document for grade 7. These learning outcomes will be achieved through learning objectives that are specific for this module, meaning the learners will learn to identify details of a story along with its theme. They will be introduced to techniques like the camera tool and the focus circle that will help them identify the details and the theme of any story. To begin with, the learners are given a challenging question. This question is to help them reflect and think and spark their curiosity. They're quite simple to understand. Since our concept is identifying theme, children are asked to think about two stories that are very familiar to them, like that of The Rabbit and the Tortoise and Akbar and Birbal. Savi here is asked to think of similarities between these stories. Children are sure to come up with similarities. And yes, they might be subjective or objective. A few learners might get to specific details by telling that I feel this, I feel that, I think this, I think that. But there might be others who might give common answers and generic answers. Both are mentioned here for you by saying that individuals might come up with the cleverness and the calmness shared by the characters between the stories and how the smart win not only the fast. But common answers might be that they're both clever and we have lessons to learn without getting into much details, which is absolutely fine. Once we jump into the activities after this brief introduction, the learners are introduced to a character. The character in our PBL is called the Director Bear. Director Bear is the character that takes the learners through the activities by giving them instructions, such as here, learners are asked to think about a story as simple as The Thirsty Crow and think about any similar story to that one. Not only a story, they can even think about movies or films that are similar to each other for various reasons that the children can explore. For example, The Thirsty Crow and The Cap Seller and the Monkeys are two stories that are similar. Here, both the characters in the stories face some problem, where the thirsty crow is unable to reach the water and the cap seller is unable to get back his caps from the monkeys. But the thirsty crow comes up with a creative plan and puts in stones and gets to the water. The same way, the cap seller, by throwing his cap to the ground, makes all the other monkeys throw their caps down too and picks them up. The same way, movies or TV shows like Chota Bheem and Ramayana, the legend of Prince Rama can be compared, where similarities are that in both the stories or both the TV shows or movies, good wins over evil, or that the hero saves the day. Having given that as a context, we move on to activity 2. Here, the children are asked to look through the shapes. Each of the shapes contain a statement. Once the learners think about what the similarities in their stories are, they are given the chance to select from one of these shapes what those similarities are. Was the dress worn by the characters the same, given within the rectangular box? Or was the location of the story the same, meaning was it in India? Then they can color the locations of the story within the heart using a color pencil. This will help learners understand what similarities exactly mean. Next, we move on to reading comprehension. Here, two passages are given to the learners, one of the thirsty crow and next of the lion and the mouse. Once the learners have read this and try to understand it, the director bear then asks a few questions, reflective questions. Details of the story, small details of the story are to be noticed. The director bear asks the learners to think of characters and answer like the character. Suppose if the lion were you or you were the lion stuck in the net, what could you see around you? What could you hear around you? What could you taste in your mouth? What could you smell? These are questions that will help the learners get a real feeling of what the characters went through, thus making the story more and more relatable. Moving on, we also introduce techniques to the learners to be able to identify the theme of the story. One such technique is called the camera tool. Like all other cameras that help us capture a moment or a memory or an event, this camera tool helps us capture the theme of the story. Camera stands for characters, actions, motivations, environment, repeating ideas or highlights, and author's intention. Characters are the people of the story. Actions are what the people do in the story. Motivations are why they do what they do. Environment is the background setting. Repeating ideas is a recurring theme that repeats itself throughout the story, and author's intention is why did the writer write what he or she wrote. For example, the thirsty crow. The characters of this story are the crow. And using the camera tool, we understand that the actions of the crow are that it's flying or dropping pebbles or drinking water. Motivation simply is that it's thirsty and that it wants to reach the water without breaking the picture, of course. Environment is a setting, probably being a sunny day, and the repeating idea in the entire story is thirst. It is the theme and crux of the story. The author's intention, on the other hand, is for learners to think of. It can be absolutely subjective. One such author's intention can be that a creative solution or a unique idea always helps us in our times of trouble. Thus, using the camera tool, we can identify the theme of the story. Same way, this can be enhanced as a skill by practicing with another exercise. Here the story is that of the lion and the mouse. Again, the camera table is given for you and the learners. The learners are provided with a few templates and clues using which they can fill the table. Once that is done, there is a thinking time. Thinking time is where Director Bear takes the learners through some reflective questions, like why should we find the details of a story? Why should we find out the differences between two stories? So on and so forth. Here, the tools that we used can be reflected upon. And finally, the question can be asked, what is the theme? The next activity is to use a focus circle. This is another tool or technique to identify the theme of a story. The focus circle helps us to get to one theme of one story, meaning The Thirsty Crow is a story whose theme simply is to find a solution to problem using creativity. The same can be used for The Lion and the Mouse, but a different one can also be used. Thus, the learners are given the opportunity to think of different themes that they might have in the story, given that they have already practiced in the previous exercises. And then a summary of this can be done using a new chapter called Avoid Plastic. This is a textbook task. After which, we have a speaking activity where we would like and encourage the learners to go around and ask their friends a few questions. A few questions are, what is your favorite story? Do you like this story because of this or that? Who is your favorite character? And then using the camera technique and the focus circle, they can come up with themes of their friends' favorite movies. Now to the final activity in our PBL. Here, the learners are asked to apply their learnings into a new form, wherein plastic is asked to be avoided in a particular chapter, and the templates given in this table might help them do so mentally. For example, my plastic water bottle can be replaced with a copper bottle. Each student can come up with their own answers for that of a plastic shopping bag, a plastic container, so on and so forth. And then we give the children an empty space to express their creativity and help them understand that they can draw and paint and sketch their thoughts too. Once they've done so, we could ask a reflective question as to what they think about avoiding plastics. Last but not the least, it's important that we summarize the importance of the tools that we explored using the PBLs, like that of a camera technique or a focus circle. Finally, the learners are given 10 self-assessment questions. These are simple MCQ questions with 4 options. These questions will help the learners summarize on their learnings of the particular PBL. And a little bit of practice on the OMR sheet will go a long way in helping our learners fill or compete in future exams. All the very best in conducting and facilitating this in your classrooms. We hope that you may reap collaborative and engaging results.